Hello and welcome to Cinema Eclectica, the Geek Show's dedicated movie podcast. I'm Graham, and this week we have a dead man joining us, a man who has stayed up for every single minute of what, at the time of recording, is last night's Oscar ceremony and somehow gone into work today. Hi, Mark.
Brains. Oh, yeah, Graham. How you doing? You doing all right? It's been, yeah. I'm flagging a little bit, but I'm doing okay. Cup of tea. Let's talk about some films and
Yeah.
that.
Yes, yeah. Because we'll save the big winner for the end, because without spoiling anything, it's our film of the week. But some of the smaller things. Firstly, I'd just like to say I'm a huge flag waver for Laura Dern finally getting that Oscar.
Yep, fantastic. I mean, just all around. I mean, it's not sort of Oscars, but Laura. It felt like supporting actress could make. I know Laura Dern was the favorite, but up to a point, I felt like it could maybe land anywhere, just because there was a sort of lack of surprise. But yeah, so good to see Laura Dern accept an Oscar. Really, it's finally she's won that Oscar for Jurassic Park.
Yes, finally, David Lynch's tactic of campaigning for an Oscar with a big sign and a cow has paid off.
Yeah, I didn't even know if that was just specifically for Oscars or if it's just for your consideration, Laura Dern.
just think about Laura Dern. It's
Yeah,
always a good thing to think about Laura Dern.
both are valid. I wasn't the only one to point this out, but at the point where I was hoping Florence Pugh was going to win it, you just got to pull out that gift from The Last Jedi of every time Laura Dern. Have you heard about this? Every time Laura Dern shoots a blaster in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, she's mouthing "pew pew." So even she was a bigger fan of Little Women, which she's also in, I suppose.
Yes, there is that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like the acting category basically ended up in the way that we expected it to.
What with Joaquin Phoenix giving a 4-minute speech about the dangers of egocentrism where he didn't thank anyone? That one? Well, no, in fairness, there was Renee Zellweger afterwards. This was the thing that I was just talking about earlier, is that like Laura Dern was pretty much 45 seconds and done. Brad Pitt mentioned at the top of his speech they were told 45 seconds and done. And it was it was a much brisker show all around because everyone kind of stuck to that, and they were very concise. And all of a sudden it's Joaquin Phoenix talking about artificially inseminated cows. Renee Zellweger I can forgive because she gave a shout out to Jessie Buckley, who she clearly, like when you watched her at the BAFTAs, she was clearly just in awe of Jessie Buckley, and it would be lovely. Like Jessie Buckley should have really been up there for Best Original Song with the interminable bunch of nominees they had on last night. Just roll out Randy Newman on his piano to sing his Toy Story song. There's another one. He's at it again. But yeah, it was. I mean, as I say, yeah, it was just a brisk. It was a brisker show than usual. As I said, I'm quite sleep deprived, so I'm repeating myself a lot. Forgive me, but yeah, it was at least more worth staying up for than let's say last year. So, I'm fatigued, but not the sort of what do you mean Bohemian Rhapsody at best editing sort of fatigue. Just sort of happy contentment at especially the final result.
Well, I didn't stay up for it because I thought, what's the best thing that could happen? It's not like it's going to start off with a Janelle Monáe musical number and end with Parasite winning everything or anything like that.
Yeah,
And then I woke up to find that literally did happen. Yeah.
Yeah, the opening number was bizarre because it was there they decided to recognise films like Queen and Slim, Oz, Rocket Man, Midsummer, all of these. Dolomite Is My Name, it was in there as well. All of these films that weren't nominated. But in a way, isn't Janelle Monáe doing an opening number about the real Oscars recognition?
Exactly.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, your heart out, Joaquin. Anyway. There was a point where Ford versus Ferrari started winning awards in the middle of the night. Well, they're all in the middle of the night, but in the middle of the ceremony, it was like it picked up best editing, and I don't know how expected that was, but I was sort of wondering if right at the end of the show, like there was going to be some sort of best picture upset, and everyone would go what, and Ford versus Ferrari would squeak it. Just had images of Matt Damon stood at the side going, "Not yet." Not yet. Not yet. And here are the nominees for Best Picture. Now. That's what it was.
I mean, there was a big upset at the end, but it was one that people were basically happy with. Before we get on to that, were there any particular grievances for you? Did anything bother you?
Well, I haven't seen Joker.
Mm.
So I can't reasonably go on about what a terrible idea for a film I think Joker is, because it might be great. Maybe it's great. We'll
I mean,
see.
I stick to my belief about it that it is the best film you can possibly make out of such a fundamentally wrong-headed idea of let's take this archetypal character and give him a medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think a huge part of why that works is Phoenix, who is superb in it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that he's amazing. It's the Oscars is usually a game of pretend that
Mm.
this award is for something else. So it was great to see Taika Waititi win best adapted screenplay for Hunt for the Wilder People. You just backdate these things to when they were.
Yes,
I'm still hoping for like in the next few years or so someone will do enough for write-in votes that Mad Max Fury Road finally wins Best Picture. It's coming up. I can tell it's going to be its year soon.
definitely. There'll be some other picture where Charlize Theron drives a truck and people think, oh, yeah,
It suddenly clicks. We're going to hear the penny
yes.
from here when it finally drops.
For me, I thought while I didn't dislike Toy Story 4, it felt like a very safe choice from a much more adventurous list of Best Animated Feature nominees.
Yeah, for me, it's a thing of like, if you've given it to Toy Story 3, Toy Story 4 isn't better than Toy Story 3. I like Toy Story 4, but it's an epilogue. Those
Yeah,
first three films are perfect. And
yeah,
if you're giving it again, I feel like it should have been. There are other films out there that I would have liked to see it go to. I was rooting for Missing Link
yeah,
personally, because I mean, I do think it would have been odd that Leica finally wins the Oscar for kind of doing a version of what everyone else is doing, but doing it way better than
yeah.
than DreamWorks and Disney are doing with it, rather
I
than
was going to
doing.
say it is kind of their DreamWorks picture, but
It is
that's
a bit,
fine.
yeah, yeah. It's a bit. I think it got wrote off that way a little bit. Like, oh, it's not as unique as as Kubo and the Two Strings or Paranorman. But I do really
Mm,
like Missing Link as well. It would have been nice to see that win.
yeah. Best documentary, I am very salty that For Sama didn't win,
Yeah,
particularly after reading that awful honest Oscar voters thing that makes me angry in a different way every year, where the dude went, I think I saw For Sama, I can't remember much about it, and you think, is this what John Ronson was writing about? Is this the world's first 100% reliable psychopath test?
I mean, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, they do this every year. They roll out some boomer or other to talk about. Well, I didn't watch Parasite because they didn't send me the English language version of it. It was a foreign version, and I didn't understand Little Women because I don't like films where I need a flow chart to tell what's going on. And
My favourite bit was where he said, "I didn't like The Irishman because I thought when I walked out of Casino, I felt like I wanted to be a gangster, and this one I didn't." So I thought, yeah, that is definitely what Martin Scorsese is going for with these movies. He just wants to make a big commercial for the mafia.
Yeah, I mean, it's of the upsets. I did see some people, saying it's a shame that The Irishman is the only one of the Best Picture nominees that got completely shut out. I think everything
Yeah,
else won at least one. But really, I
yeah,
don't think Martin Scorsese is hard up for the acclaim. Really, I think that he may even make better films. I did like The Irishman. I think it comes
mm,
not to celebrate the gangster movie, but to bury it, and it's
yeah,
as such, it's an end to that, And they've overlooked plenty of those other films in the past. It'll be fine. But just on the subject of the brutally honest ballots, we
mm,
are gonna, in the next couple of years, they'll just keep shortening these. The average age will come down, or rather, it'll stay the same, but it'll be just younger people getting older. So it'll just simply be The Irishman, Two Irish, stuff like to that effect. Really, it's just gonna shorten it down. I
yeah.
mean, yeah, that's what it is. It is a very low form of feature that just happens every single year. They just go and ask someone to give their most outrageously, rubbish opinions.
I mean, if someone comes up to you at a party and says, "Hey, I'm going to give you my brutally honest opinions," you don't immediately think, "Oh man, I'd better stick with this guy. I bet they're
Yeah,
amazing."
you just go, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
yeah,
But yeah, it ended well, I think we should say, which will allow us a pivot to talk
yeah.
about our film of the week, which is Bong Joon-ho's Best Picture winner, Best Director winner, Best Original Screenplay winner, Parasite.
Bong Hive, activate. it was a beautiful, beautiful night for Parasite.
Yes.
It just kept on coming. I mean, it was kind of to stay awake, really, just looking at the rolling Twitter commentary along with it, and people going, "It's happening," and I'm not going, "It's not going to happen." We're going to get, Green Book won last year. We're going to get
Yeah.
something pulled out of absolutely nowhere right at the last minute. But no, it worked out really well. The best film won. Can't say it fair enough.
I must admit, I thought he was quite likely for Best Director, if only because Best Director picks have included a few more adventurous choices and certainly a few more non-American choices and non-Anglophone countries. But I
Yeah.
never thought in a million years that he could win Best Picture, and I'm so happy he did.
Yeah, I mean, going back as far as the upset of Crash winning Best Picture instead of Brokeback
Mm,
Mountain, Ang Lee still
yeah,
won Best Director. I think it maybe goes back that as far as the modern splits of Best Picture and Best Director, where it's far less
yeah,
common nowadays. I think for the same, for the winner of Best Picture to also win Best Director, there's normally something
yeah,
of a split. Like there's normally
yeah.
two front runners or other, and then other years Green Book wins. But that is at least like an outlier in the last few years, I would say. It's like there's been a fair few actually quite interesting Best Picture winners, I would say,
Oh
for the
yeah,
last
yeah,
few years, and obviously now including Parasite.
yeah. So, I mean, I want to say let's talk about that, but I also don't want to talk about that because how do you talk about Parasite without spoiling it?
Yeah, this is the when people have called it Hitchcocky, and it's in the true sense of of before Psycho came out, it being very common to just roll cinema programs just on a loop, and you just walk in halfway through a film and you watch to the end, and
Mm,
then just watch up to halfway through where you got to, and then Psycho is one of the first ones where like you must watch Psycho from beginning to end.
yeah,
And don't reveal any of Psycho's secrets. It's in the truest sense that's as near as we're getting to Psycho for 2020. Really, this is an era film that it's benefited in some ways that it's coming out weirdly later in the UK than it has in
yeah.
the US. I think they've timed it quite cannily
Because
because
it's
there'll
had
be
this build up and it does actually live up to it. It's a high risk strategy, but if you can pull it off, it works.
yeah, there's been a certain contingent of neckbeards who, like a certain, let's say, DC film that was in the field, have been saying, "What's the sense in giving Best Picture to a film no one's seen?" It's like that's a pretty good reason to give
Yeah,
to give Best Picture to a film. So it's been breaking box office records already, but we should say going ahead of this, I think we're going to try and avoid spoilers as much as we can
yeah,
beyond the
yeah,
basic setup.
completely. Yeah,
Yeah, director Bong has pretty much said like anything that's in the trailer is fair game. So I think we're okay, and that's just as far as let's say the first paragraph of the Wikipedia page.
yeah. The essential setup of it is pretty simple, really, isn't it? That you have two families, the Kims, who are very poor and are having great trouble getting a Wi-Fi signal as the film opens,
Mm.
and you've got the Parks, who are very rich. And the Kims decide to ingratiate themselves into the Parks' lives.
Yeah, it's essentially
And
yeah, it's Kiwoo who's the young lad who gets offered
mm,
basically his mate's job being an English tutor for this
yeah,
much richer family.
they ingratiate themselves in a number of ways that I think should be sort of left to the viewer to discern. But there is one thing early on where Kiwu gets a thing called a Scholar's Rock from his friend, which is like a lucky charm in Korea.
Hmm.
And there, there's this wonderful line where as soon as he gets it, he goes, "Oh, that's good. It's very metaphorical." And I, that line recurs a couple of times, and it is emblematic of a film that is always very slightly ahead of your understanding of it. If there is something in the film that looks like it's going down a familiar path,
Hmm.
that is always misdirection. I think Bong Joon-ho is amazingly alert to what the audience will be expecting from this kind of narrative.
Yeah, I mean there's a certain the social drama aspect of it is paramount to the
Mm,
setup really, and it's a matter of where it goes from there. You'll just have to find out for yourselves. But it is at least I would say a matter of going into this. I watched this with my partner. We've both watched in recent months and years. We've watched Snowpiercer. We've watched
mm,
Okja. There is very much the feeling in the setup of like we're about to get bonged here, like something's about to happen. Like Bong Joon Ho makes these films that, yeah, it's I would say like it's not in any way like slowing the setup. It's engaging
Mm,
right from the very beginning.
completely,
It's
yeah.
yeah, and it keeps you absolutely enraptured all the way through it. It's absolutely gripping.
There was one point where I remember just thinking, God, imagine if I'd gone to the loo at this point. I
Yeah,
would have no idea what was going on when I got back. It is the sort of film that it's not like mechanically plot driven. It does always feel like the plot twists arise naturally from the situation and from the characters that are set up, but it does deliver a absolutely staggering amount of twists.
yeah, it's so arresting all the way through, and it is one of those films where absolutely everyone in it is brilliant, like top to bottom.
Yeah.
The ensemble cast is absolutely fantastic. Song Kang Ho in particular is amazing as Ki Woo's dad.
Song Kang-ko, I mean, he's such a great actor. He's been in Bong Joon-ho's films before. He was the father in The Host. He was in
Hmm.
Snowpiercer. He's worked with Park Chan-wook a couple of times. I mean, he's incredibly talented, but the other thing about him is he just has one of those faces where you look at him and you think, oh yeah, that's a real person who's lived a bit. That's someone who's actually got some expressiveness and uniqueness to their face. It's really hard not to warm to the guy as soon as you see him, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just in the first like 5-10 minutes of the film. There's again very early on, not giving
Mm,
much away. This is a family who are basically in the gig economy. They're trying to do anything, and this is basically just a menial task that they're doing that they're just
mm,
stuck on. And like there's kind of they go on YouTube, they find a video of someone doing it, and he starts trying to replicate that. And it's the
yeah.
look of like the fixation on his face. He's like, "This is a way to do this faster." And then something else happens, and his face is just absolutely all over through. Yeah, it's as you say, it's just the experience, the life experience that he brings to that
Mm,
part. It's just impressive. It feels like absolutely like lived in
yeah.
world. And I would say that like not that the other films up for Best Picture this year were all, are pretty good. There's a fairly good field, I would say, this year of
Yeah. Yeah.
the other 8 films that were up for it. I think Parasite's unique, except maybe, except for Marriage Story, maybe it's the only one. Parasite is the only one that's sort of set now that says something about where we are now as a
Yeah.
society. Like those other films are largely like set in the past, and it's true that like Best Picture winners do tend to be, period pieces and more
Yeah.
historical films, that kind of thing. But there's normally a little bit more variety in the nominations. I do like that
Yeah.
in a year where it's almost exclusively either nostalgia pieces or things aren't what they used to be in some way or another. We've got a film that
Yeah.
is so vital to now. Like the film that won this year is a film that it's.
Mm,
I don't want to say universal because the specificity of it is so often what's good with is what's great with these films. Sometimes when people go, "Oh, it's universal," it's a way of saying like, "Oh, I relate to them," even though I don't know
yeah,
them,
or
or
that
that kind
it's
of yeah,
been blanded out for mass consumption. But
yeah,
as you say, this isn't like that at all. It is very Korean,
yeah.
and
I
it
mean,
also feels like
it's
something that anyone in all of the world could watch.
exactly yeah. I mean, it's hard to go. I want to go into further details, but I don't. I want everyone to. I sort of want to sit next to anyone and watch them watch this for the first time.
No, it's. I think we spoke a little bit about Bong Joon-ho's previous films.
Hmm.
The first one I watched was The Host, the astonishingly entertaining giant nuclear tadpole attacks Seoul movie that he made.
Yeah,
And I liked that very much, but the one that really made me a ride or die fan was the one he did afterwards, which was Mother, which I thought had a flavour of Patricia Highsmith, a flavour of the Coen brothers, a flavour of a lot of things that I'd absolutely adored in the past, while still being identifiably its own thing with its own style. And I think Parasite is maybe closer in tone to Mother than certainly than the English language films that he's done that you mentioned, which I have also liked, but in
yeah,
different ways. It has something of that kind of aloof nastiness, that very dark sense of humour that I found so appealing in Mother.
Yeah, there is a feeling of everything coming together in one way or
Mm,
another in this film. Everything that he's done before. So whether it's Snowpiercer, or Okja, or Mother, which I haven't revisited in a long time, but that was I think the first. I saw that before I saw The Host. So that was kind of like a
right.
random. Someone had recommended it, and they had like a love film account at that point. So I got sent
Yeah.
a Blu-ray in the post just before Christmas, and it just absolutely blew me away. It's just
Mm,
yeah, it is. He does just have this incredibly cinematic sense of things. There's never like a wasted moment in his films. You're always
yeah.
grasped, as you say. It's like you can't run out, you can't nip out to the toilet if you see it in the cinema.
Yeah.
You will miss something. But I'm kind of like really looking forward to seeing Parasite again as well. Is the main
Yeah,
thing. It's
me
like
too.
I've only seen it the once so far. Have you?
Yeah, me
Have you
too.
seen it once? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something I'm definitely going to go see again. I mean, as we say about the best picture win, it means more people are going to get to see it. People who wouldn't normally go and see subtitled films, I think, are going to be interested in this as a result. Not least
Yeah.
the win, but just the hype around it all around. And
Mm,
I think it was when he won the Golden Globe. Director Bong said to the effect, if you get past the 1 inch high barrier of subtitles, you open up this
yes.
whole world
I love
of
that
films.
phrase.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's brilliantly put, but that's just how that's his handle on what he's trying to say. Really, it comes across so well in all of his films as well.
I mean, we've been talking on this show quite a few times about Korean cinema, partly because Rob is a huge fan of it, and Rob has opened my eyes to Korean stuff that I would never have found out without him. But I think one of the things that I always observe about Korean cinema is there is this element to it where it's what you want Hollywood to be like. There are some Korean directors who make things that you might identify as kind of looking like an art film, something like Kiddo Kim or that guy who made Burning, whose name I've just forgotten because I think he's overrated. But anyway, um, but there are people like Bong Joon-ho and Kim Ji-woon who make films that are accessible, that are genre-based, that have suspense and action and twists and humor and all of the things that you would look for in a conventional mainstream multiplex hit. They just do it with much more originality and daring. And I think the fact that something like this, which as you say is so relevant to now, is so ballsy and has characters who were really kind of daringly unsympathetic at times. The fact that something as original and gamey as this can be South Korea's biggest ever movie, I think speaks of an industry that's in extraordinary health.
Yeah, and on top of everything else, it's just wonderful to see. I mean, when just not to keep circling back around to the Oscars, but it is
Mm,
odd to see. I mean, the thing that's surprising about the win, aside from the foreign language thing, is that it's this incredibly anti-capitalist film, and you've got this room full
mm.
of people clutching gift bags worth almost $250,000, all absolutely rapturous at this film as one. That's how good it
Yes.
is. It's possibly been
Yeah.
misread by some, but the quality of it is incredible.
Someone on Twitter, I can't remember who, said, going home tonight, Jeff Bezos was extra nice to his chauffeur.
Yeah, I mean, it was every time he was up on stage last night. It was to the effect. I mean, it was like thank you, and then I can't wait to have a drink. And yeah, he was ready for some celebrating.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I think Bong Joon-ho's kind of high style is really appealing to me. All that prowling camera and those sort of big attention grabbing compositions. I love that he doesn't hide the camera. He's not trying to other directors making a story like this, where it's got a large family unit and there's kind of a social realist kind of quality to it,
Hmm.
would try and make the camera invisible, but he's really formally precise, and I like that a lot. It makes me think back to the sort of films by Kubrick and Scorsese and Tarantino that got me into cinema back in the 90s, and it's wonderful to see that that style still works.
Yeah, there are just yeah, there are shots in here that just sort of absolutely take your breath away. Just kind
Mm,
of, I mean, and as you say, yeah, it's the style of it. Absolutely, it's such a stylish film that stands out, and it's the style that makes it stand out as well. Really, it's odd because I kind of want to go into further detail, but it's like I think I want to have the discussion that I'm going to have with other people I take to go see this film.
yeah, yeah.
It's hard to talk about it in a spoilery way because a spoiler free way rather because
Maybe I should lead us away from spoiler territory by just making a really dumb observation, which I've had
go
in my
ahead.
pocket quite a while. Yeah. Um, the main difference to me between his South Korean work and his English language work is that the South Korean films, they're very green.
Uh,
There's there's
yeah, I
much more
suppose.
green than there is in Okja and Snowpiercer in here.
Well, in Snowpiercer, there was not a lot of scope for green.
No, no,
There's
it's
sort
true.
of like black jelly cubes, snow. Yeah, okay, it's fair. I don't think it's a dumb observation. He's probably trying to tell us something. We'll figure it out. Let's go see Parasite 4 more times and we'll
Yes.
figure it out.
Oh, so, do we have any thoughts on what our listeners should watch alongside this?
Yeah, I thought of another one while we were talking, so I'll say the
Mm,
one we discussed off air because I don't know what your choice is going to be. I think that again, without spoilers, this as far as 2019 films, this is make an impeccable double bill with Us with Jordan
mm,
Peele's film,
yes.
because it similarly to that film, it's a film about social structures and one another, not as allegorically as Us is.
Mm,
It's kind of got as us
it
is.
doesn't.
That's an awkward
Yeah.
arrangement of words there. But you've got Kiwoo is the son who's teaching a teenage girl English, and he's got an older sister, she's got a younger brother. There's the mom, there's the dad. They mirror each other in a big way, but there's all of this imagery of they're in this great big house. The family, the
Mm,
wealthy family, are in this big house that's like way elevated compared to their semi basement
yeah,
arrangements that the Kim family are in,
yeah,
and yeah, it's just the mirroring of that and the scale of that, and the way, as you say, the movement of the camera as they're traversing from one location to the other. It's just really impressive. But as the similarities of Us will be more obvious once you've watched both films, really. But
yeah.
I was just if you're looking for something to double header this with. Maybe Us. I've got another idea as well, but what would you say, Graham?
For me, I was also thinking about that house and the role they played in the movie and how it's sort of weird, angular, geometric quality. It's very attractive. It certainly makes you understand why the Kims want to live there, but it's quite disturbing. And it made me think about Dogtooth by Yorgos
Ah.
Lanthimos, which also has this very modernist gleaming house with a beautiful lawn, a very green film, again, very green,
Hmm.
um, in which absolutely horrible things happen. I mean, Parasite has its strong moments, but Dogtooth is blisteringly unpleasant. And yet, something about that seemed to chime with not least with the Academy, who nominated it for Best Foreign Language Film, which was, I mean, it's less surprising now we see what Lanthimos has gone on to. It was a big surprise back then, and I think part of it is because Dogtooth just feels so open to so many different readings, and pairing it with Parasite would just maybe unlock something even more in it that I haven't even thought about. But they are both very green.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I am starting to wonder if you've got like a Dulux chart for foreign language films. This all right, so this goes on this side of green, and this is slightly greener, but not as green as.
It's literally my only critical faculty.
The other one I was going to say, and maybe it's a bit basic to say so, but I absolutely loved Shoplifters. And in the setup,
Ah,
at least, I was expecting, I think, a film that was a little bit closer to that. That's another film that has its twists and turns. So,
mm.
if you haven't seen Shoplifters yet, that'd be another one to catch
and
up with either before you go and see Parasite or when you get home.
and back-to-back Palme d'Or winners too, which is
Yeah.
astonishing. I mean, there was a time when the Cannes Awards were as Euro-focused as the Oscars are America-focused, but to have a Japanese film one year and a South Korean film the next year really does serve notice that something big is changing.
Yeah. And one more, just because I've been recommending you double bill this with everything. Let's say Knives Out. Knives Out and Parasite.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely like that. Barely needs explaining, but I think it's right.
Yeah, Knives Out has like an amazing number of like films from last year. It double bills with amazingly, like Ready or Not, with just the rich people thing. Hustlers, because they both have characters who have a regurgitative reaction to mistruth.
Yes.
It's the list goes on.
Yeah.
I feel like
Right.
we've talked around Parasite quite nicely there without spoiling anything. I'm quite chuffed with us. I'm very tired, and
Yeah, I think we've done good work. We
yeah,
haven't mentioned once that it's a sledge and he's a ghost.
5 stars, much green.
Unsure if your Spider-Man is amazing or spectacular? Infinitely confused by Crisis on Infinite Earths? Or does the mere thought of X-Men continuity make you tremble? Then 4Panel is the podcast for you. Join me, Andrew, and my co-host Robin Mick as we guide you through the weird and wild world of comics. We'll talk about the secret origins of your favourite characters, delve into the craziest events of comics past, and review the hottest new graphic novels that you might have missed. That's 4Panel, a part of the Geek Show podcast network, available wherever podcasts are found.
So, if you're enjoying listening to the podcast, you can donate to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Geek Show to help us keep making these podcasts. It's not just podcasts we do. Look for The Geek Show on YouTube to find our new series of videos. We're on Facebook, just search for The Geek Show, and on Twitter at TGS_The Geek Show. In anticipation for it being a big night for South Korean cinema, which it turned out to be, we made our question of the week. Which country do you most look forward to watching films from? And we got a couple of answers from social media. Rob on Twitter said, I hate to be predictable, but I'm going to be anyway. I have to say Korean movies due to the simple fact of how many Korean movies have gone down as personal favourites. Same with directors and actors too. Also just as partial to Japanese movies. Meanwhile, on Facebook, Oliver Lewis took I guess it's a tactic, it's a way of answering the question, and said, "The lost continent of Mu gave us the justified ancients of Mu, which contributed a lot to music, but really looking forward to what cinema they want to show us as well."
Fantastic. I mean, it's an approach. There's the Parks and Rec. It's just reminded me of the Parks and Recreation episode where they have a model UN and someone insists on representing the moon. Yep, it can't argue with it really. It's not bound by geopolitics. Well done, you win.
For me personally, I mean, they can be fairly annoying, but fortunately, there are enough of them to make those fairly annoying ones statistically insignificant. I do enjoy French movies. I think there is a quality of like intelligent scripting, of literate writing and directorial style that is hard to really find in, certainly not expressed as consistently in many other countries' cinema. And I mean, perhaps my biggest discovery this last decade is how much I love Czech and Slovak films. In particular, there was this point, like between, let's say, 1958 and 1978, where every single Czechoslovak film was great. I don't know how they did it. Largely, they did it. I mean, there's a famous story about one of the best directors they had, Viva Kitilova, who made one of her early films, Sealing, by submitting a script, having it rejected by the communist bureaucracy that ran the Czechoslovak film industry, getting an approved playwright to write a different script, getting that approved, then throwing it away and making her version anyway. Uh, So that's the kind of both collaborative and amusingly crooked spirit of the Czechoslovak wave there. But they had so much energy in those movies. It's like nothing else you've ever seen. And I do recommend, anyone who is looking for something that is like lapel grabbingly new and exciting should check out some, Jaromil Gires or Viva Kisilova or Jan Nemec, or I mean, it's all great. It's so good.
Yeah, good show. I have to go with the United States of America. No, I'm only joking. I mean, along the same lines. I mean, I knew Rob was going to say Korean. Hi, Rob.
Yeah.
But along the similar lines, it's just not least among them. Bong Joon-ho's films. There's been an amazing number of films coming out of South Korea in recent years. Shoplifters, I already mentioned. Kim Ji-woon's films are incredible as well. I was just recently writing about this last week. I wrote a feature about Arnold Schwarzenegger's films post governorship, and I was writing about Kim Ji-woon coming to America and writing making The Last Stand, which is an English language film, American film, but an American language film, if you will. But it's the only it's the only film that Schwarzenegger's been in since that really gets how to use him. It's the closest he's ever come to playing an everyman, but it's still a bonkers action movie as well. Sorry, it's a long roundabout way of getting to my answer. Which, while I have a soft spot for Korean films, while I was thinking about the foreign language films I've liked the most over the last 10 years, I've kind of got to say Belgium. Belgium's had a couple of good ones, haven't they? But the ones that come to mind specifically, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a Marion Cotillard session here, but the two jump to mind immediately. Like Rust and Born is a film that really took me aback when I first saw it. Technically French-Belgian, but Belgian's in there. It really took me aback when I saw it. It's one of these films that sometimes gets to think, it's a bit implausible. It's like, is it? Is it though? Is it that implausible? It's a cinematic, construct. Sure, if you can accept that this happens to Marion Cotillard's character early on in it, it's an incredibly compelling film. But if you want a bit more grounded, also with Marion Cotillard, I would go for 2 Days, One Night. I really love that film. That's such a similarly to the kind of social stuff we're talking about in Parasite. You want to say universal, but it's just the thing of we're all on this planet, man. This capitalism is going on everywhere. But 2 Days, One Night stars Marion Cotillard as a woman who's essentially on the end of a workplace vote. Someone's got to lose their job, and she's essentially got to go around on a weekend, the 2 Days, One Night of the title, to persuade her co-workers, or more than half of her co-workers at least, to save her job. Some of them react when being confronted with their decision to bin her, like with shame and with regret, and say, of course I'll support you. Other people are more defensive, and it's just this incredible character study both of her and of the people around her. On the other hand, if you're fine with Rust and Bone, and you could go, if anything, more bizarre, Graham, have you ever seen the Brand New Testament?
I've heard of this, but I've never seen it.
It's delightful. To me, one of the most underrated weird comedies of recent years. It is basically, it starts out with a caption, but not caption, it's a young girl saying, God is real, he lives in Belgium. And it's basically this high-rise apartment where God sits in a big room with all of the rules. So it's this disgusting, horrible old bloke who just writes rules like when you get in the bath, the doorbell's going to ring. And stuff like that. He's taking them all up on an old computer, filing them away. He lives with his wife, and the young girl you hear talking at the beginning, who is Jesus' younger sister. Jesus is persona non grata in the house because people used to fear God for that, all that Old Testament stuff, and then Jesus had to go out and ruin it with all of his ideas. And so the 10-year-old daughter, Ia, he's abusive towards her, and he's basically just a big grumpy sadist. She decides, all right, you know what? We're going to do another testament. It worked all right for Big Brother, so I'm just going to do another one. I'm going to text everyone in the world the date that they die, and that'll free people from fear of God. This is basically the setup to a film. It's more or less the gospel according to Douglas Adams, Terry Gilliam. It's just this berserk, absurd film that, the nearest thing I think of in English language is films like Dogma, but it's just more surreal.
Okay.
This is the film that has Catherine Deneuve kind of break up with her husband and get together with someone who really understands her, who just happens to be a silverback gorilla. It's this. It's directed by Jaco van Dormil. It's really, really fun. and that's why I'm going with Belgium.
So, a bit of off-the-shelf stuff.
Yeah. Do you want
Yeah.
to go? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. We got a Blu-ray screener of Bliss by Joe Bigos, which is out on Eureka Video today. Comes out this week. This is another straight to DVD horror movie, and I was talking last week, I think it was, about Harpoon, which is just out on Arrow Video, aptly enough, and how amazingly good that was, and how back when there was a strict hierarchy of films, and cinema release was good, straight to video probably bad, TV movie definitely bad. Back then you would never find a straight to DVD horror movie that was this interesting. I think the arrival of things like Netflix and Amazon have really messed with that hierarchy in an interesting way.
Hmm.
And Bliss, I think, it's not entirely as successful as Harpoon, although there's a part where that is because it aims a bit higher. Harpoon aims to be a very straightforward, very nasty black comedy, and it achieves that completely. Bliss is aiming for something a bit bigger that I'm not quite sure it pulls off, but man, is it ever having a good time getting there. Like I said, it's directed by Joe Bigos, who I was not familiar with. I know a few people who have watched some of his previous films have said this is definitely a level up, that this is something that they didn't predict he would have in him. It stars Dora Madison, who has appeared in his films before. Did I, readers, become excited about this solely because I saw the poster and mistook Dora Madison for Tatiana Maslany? Yes, I did. Um, but fortunately, that expectation of Maslany tier acting, if you will, was not frustrated by Dora Madison's performance, which is really astonishingly full on, and is one of those horror movie performances that reminds you that awards bodies' refusal to consider horror movie performances in acting categories is really completely insane and unjustifiable, because there is no one alive who puts in more effort than a really good horror movie actor.
Hmm.
She plays a painter who is falling apart, who has a series of fairly fraught relationships, is going nowhere with her work, and is throwing herself into casual sex and drugs to try and avoid facing up to this. She lives in Los Angeles. The first thing you notice is that it looks absolutely gorgeous. It is one of those films set in Los Angeles which makes you wonder why anyone bothers to make movies in any other city. And big shout out to Mike Testin, who is the cinematographer for this and does astonishing work. As it goes on, it moves from that kind of very open, very naturally lit LA street aesthetic to something more neon lit and claustrophobic that's inspired a lot of comparisons to Gaspar Noé, not least because, like Noé, a large part of the film's motivation, I would say, is to make you feel like you're having heart palpitations. Uh, as the drug that she buys takes more and more of a disturbing effect on Dora Madison's character Desi, it becomes a really strenuous film, and everything Madison is putting into the film, you feel yourself as a viewer. It's a really exhausting film in the best possible way. The thing that I think it lacks is what I suppose someone like George A. Romero would have brought to this film, because the idea the idea of an artist who becomes sort of possessed by this supernatural drug she takes is the sort of thing that has antecedents. Again, another point of comparison that's been brought up over and over again is Abel Ferrara, and it did make me think quite a lot of Abel Ferrara's The Addiction, which takes a classic horror movie situation, in his case vampirism, and turns it into a metaphor for drug addiction. So there's a certain commonality there. I think Romero would also have liked this plot nugget, but it did make me think that if Romero did it, there would have been a sort of third act twist where it was revealed that this drug was developed by some military industrial sector or some evil multinational. And you think, okay, maybe that plot's been done. Maybe there's a reason why they're not doing that. But I do think it needed just something else in its third act, something that took this situation, which is, yes, extreme and insane, but has been extreme and insane since the film started, and just pushed it to another level. As it is, what we get in the final act is an awful lot of flailing and contortion from Madison, an awful lot of Evil Dead style horrible body meltdowns, a lot of screaming, a lot of fighting, and in the end, a pretty good painting. Although whether it was worth all the trouble, I guess, will depend on your tolerance for abstract expressionism. But I did think, for all it is flawed, it is a very promising piece of work. And I think, when you look back to the early 2010s, I mean, this is just my personal take, but I felt like cinema release horror in the early 2010s, late 2000s was absolute dreck. But underneath it, you had these people coming up like, Mike Flanagan and people like that who were doing really creative stuff on the straight to DVD level. And now, of course, they're all doing big, people like Flanagan and Jeremy Saulnier are all doing big, wide release horror movies, and good for them. And things like this have reassured me that there are still people with fresh ideas kind of coming up on that circuit who can hopefully, I think it's entirely plausible that we could see Joe Begos helming a Stephen King adaptation or something big and commercial like that in the near future. I think the seeds are all there. But that's Bliss, which is out now on Blu-ray from Eureka.
I'm sold. I'm definitely gonna go seek that one out. Just to double, I'm just looking at the poster though, just to double check, Grim. Not to go
Yeah.
all orphan black. Is it possible that Dora Madison is one of Tatiana Maslany's characters, and we just didn't realize? It seems
She looks so much like Tatiana Maslany. Yes,
yeah.
it's unbelievable.
I think just from my perspective, I think Orphan Black just got us seeing Tatiana Maslany and how cornflakes she could be anywhere. So
Well, I think the beauty of Orphan Black is that any future Tatiana Maslany character might be part of Orphan Black canon.
Yeah,
It
pretty
could
much.
just be a clone that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, the show is ongoing, even though it ended so many years ago.
I understand you've got some new cinema releases for us.
Yeah, should we do two? Do you want to hear both of these?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's go.
let's get one out of the way first. Doolittle.
Yeah.
Doolittle is Doolittle is a film directed by Stephen Gaghan, as in Stephen Gaghan, who wrote Traffic and directed Syriana. I think Syriana's the only one he's directed.
I think he did Gold, that Matthew McConaughey thing.
Yes,
that
he did.
made,
Sorry, yes,
yeah.
so he did that. But either way, you wouldn't expect him to suddenly jump onto a big CGI extravaganza.
No.
Not least one that appears to be Robert Downey Jr. doing the kind of film Johnny Depp would do a few years ago. Just absolutely running off a cliff with eccentricity, and everyone else having to follow after his deranged example. So based on the Voyage of Doctor Dolittle, the Hugh Lofting story, kind of going back to the source material a bit, in a way that the Rex Harrison musical is just really dreary and sort of a bit more faithful than, say, the more successful and more popular Eddie Murphy reboots, which were more contemporary and frankly better than either version on either side of it. But this kind of takes it back. So it's going a bit more to this kind of misanthropic edge of the character, the doctor who talks to animals, Dr. Dolittle. He played by Robert Downey Jr. in seclusion after the death of his wife, living in an animal sanctuary gifted to him by Queen Victoria, who's played by here a mostly sedentary Jessie Buckley, but we'll get to that. So he's living in as the film starts out. There's some fun stuff in there, just visually. Dr. Dolittle playing chess with a gorilla, and all of the chess pieces are little mice wearing chess piece hats. And it's as a creative, as a visual thing, it's like, all right, that's kind of fun. It's the idea of them every time the gorilla goes to make a move, the mice are scared and they just run away and stuff. So, all right, it's kind of fun, light. The plot, as far as it goes, is that the aforementioned Queen Victoria has fallen deathly ill. Her physician, Dr. Mudfly, played by Michael Sheen, reluctantly calls upon Dr. Dolittle at the Queen's behest to figure out what's wrong with her. He determines that she has been poisoned. The only cure is a root that's found on an island that nobody knows about, a tree no one has ever found. So he has to get on a big boat with all of his animals and go and find it. It's all very, as far as the plot goes, it's all a big mechanism to have Robert Downey Jr. do the worst Welsh accent yet known. oh boy, chinless, that sort of voice is where we're at with it.
Bring up Rob Collins' joke from when the trailer to this premiered, which is so in this one he can talk to the animals, but they can't understand what the hell he's saying.
Pretty much, yeah. but you know, but what's odd is that around him you have this all-star voice cast. Who are kind of, as I mentioned, characters being dragged after his deranged example. So you've got this voice cast that includes Rami Malek, John Cena, Kumail Nanjiani, Octavia Spencer, Craig Robinson, Selena Gomez, Marion Cotillard, all playing animals. Many of them, like John Cena, for instance, voices a polar bear who calls everyone bro. It's called bro. And it's like a period based on all of different accents. Kumail Nanjiani is this neurotic ostrich, or this egotistical ostrich. Octavia Spencer is a duck who at one point quotes Rush Hour for some reason, says, "Can you understand the words coming out of my bill?" And yeah, it's really just a case of funny voices will continue until morale improves. The exceptions in this, Emma Thompson, who voices Polynesia, the parrot, and you've got Tom Holland voicing a bespectacled dog, and you've got Ralph Fiennes, who in the best part of the film arguably voices a tiger whose problem isn't medical, but he just has self-esteem issues. And all these well-judged performances just surrounded by all of this stuff that's just been taped over the top. There was 21 days of reshoots went into this film after initial poor test screenings that converted a young character who appears like a younger human character who sort of traipses around after Downey and wants to be his apprentice. In the original cut of the film was his son. So with only 3 weeks of reshoots, they changed it from being his actual son to being this kid he's never met till today who wants to be, and barely, I guess, had to reshoot that much. So, you know, it's an absolute mess behind the scenes. It's hard not to lay the blame at Robert Downey Jr.'s feet because that accent is the first and foremost terrible choice in it. Yeah. And as I say, it just feels like everything else comes tumbling after it. The nicest thing I say is fair is that Michael Sheen is in it, and Michael Sheen is indestructible as a screen presence. He's playing yet again another absolutely shameless baddie. A lot of this film is shameless, but I don't think everybody else knows it as well as he does, and he's fantastically entertaining to watch as always. So that's Dolittle. I doubt it was high on anyone's to watch list, so I'm going to pivot straight out of that nimbly. I'm going to pirouette, do a few cartwheels into Birds of Prey, which is a spin-off from Suicide Squad. Yeah, it's better than it sounds already. How familiar are you with Harley Quinn, Graham, as a character?
I mean, reasonably. I'm aware of who she is in Suicide Squad. I'm aware that she came up from Batman the Animated Series and was written into the comics because people just liked her that much.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. She is a terrific character, a terrific arc in the animated series, and she's basically the Joker's girlfriend, and they have a sort of Looney Tunes-ish abusive relationship that Suicide Squad naturally decided to just change into this choke me daddy horribleness that became a horrible hot topic sort of trend for a while. This is just all around in general much better. It started out started out life as a project called Gotham City Sirens, which was going to be another David Ayer project, would have had a bunch of female DC characters in it. Instead, it's sort of been taken back in a way. It's now directed by Kathy Yan, written by Christina Hodson, who gave us a Bumblebee a couple of years ago. Has generally written few good, really good tempo scripts. So Margot Robbie produces this one as well. In the film, to give it its full title, it's Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. And the film, in that mode, introduces the girl gang, sort of female character supergroup, but Birds of Prey from the comics, but as the title suggests, tells it from the quite solipsistic perspective of Harley Quinn, of like, why is everybody coming after me? So in the film, she has been dumped by the Joker. Basically, Jared Leto needed to be signed off of this one as soon as possible, so he is not appearing in this film. Gratifyingly, the entire film is a massive thank you next to his whole performance, which he thought was James Cagney, but came off more like Jim Carrey in The Mask. So it's Harley Quinn on her own. She realizes that a lot of people have only been putting up with her and a Looney Tunes-ish violent way of going on because they're scared of the Joker. So she finds herself suddenly alone, having to stand up on her own. There's sort of quite nice metatextual thing about this being a spin-off and people constantly telling you can't stand up on your own. That sort of goes through in many ways throughout the thing. The villain of the piece is Black Mask, played by Ewan McGregor via channeling John Barrowman, I would say, in this one. He's playing a Batman villain. Like when I watch someone play a to sort of paraphrase Ben Whishaw and David Copperfield, when I watch someone play a Batman villain, I want to know they played a Batman villain, all right? None of this Oscar-winning guff, like none of this really worthy, it's a statement, we live in a society type rubbish, right? I want to see Ewan McGregor vamping it up, being after Harley Quinn, and variously running into, basically having a vendetta against the other female characters in the film. They are Huntress, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who is the orphaned daughter of a gangster who has social anxiety. Is a complete badass, absolute killing machine, but has social anxiety. So she's kind of like practicing a shtick and saying her name in a bathroom mirror before she goes out and shoots people with a crossbow. There's Journey Smollett-Bell as Black Canary, who's, again, orphaned, living up to the sort of legacy of a superhero mother. And you've got Rosie Perez as Renee Montoya, who is alcoholic, cynical detective who's been passed over for promotion at the Gotham City Police Department. She's building the case against Black Mask, against Ewan McGregor's character. And the thing that first and foremost comes with the female gaze as opposed to David Ayer's gaze in the last film is that, you know, this manages to be a film that's not just like a big, wacky Looney Tunes style violent extravaganza, which it also is. It's also brilliantly about each of different characters has a different type of specifically female trauma going on, and the film addresses that in a really entertaining but also interesting way. Margot Robbie isn't like watching her in this compared to Suicide Squad. This is why you get Margot Robbie to play Harley Quinn, not so that you can crayon clothes on her and have her just sort of prance about and not really be a character. You have her because she has Daffy Duck energy you can see from space when you give her this kind of material. She is absolutely fantastic in this. As I mentioned, the Looney Tunes thing is first and foremost, but also the stunt choreography comes from the team behind the John Wick films. So this is around about, like Suicide Squad, it's a 15 certificate film, but it's also way up there in terms of the violence. It is wince-inducing throughout, like how violent it gets, but it's on the scale of as I said, because it's got that Looney Tunes thing. The thing it most closely resembles is Deadpool, so it's kind of striving for that. I did enjoy it more when it was aiming for Looney Tunes than when it was aiming for Deadpool, but the violence is going on throughout there anyway. There's a sort of staggered structure to it where with Harley Quinn as the unreliable narrator, we kind of jump backwards and forwards to the chronology. I don't know that always works. I think it slows the film down a little bit, but everyone is giving their best. Everyone is fantastic in it. The cast is brilliant. Mary Elizabeth Winstead more or less steals it. As I say, just a socially anxious vigilante murderer. Just really, really made me laugh with just this absolutely impeccable deadpan, really. It's not like a typically jokey character, but there's sort of an element of like the Scott Pilgrim type deadpan, when she played Ramona in that. But as I said, it takes off magnificently. Like there's points in it where you know they've nailed it. One of which is when Harley Quinn turns around mid-scene in a fight and someone else is asked, like, when did she have time to change into roller skates? You know, it's that kind of like it is a lot of fun. It's, as I say, it's a massive, you know, just like thank you next to that whole era, not just to Jared Leto, but to the Snyderverse, the DC Murderverse, whatever you want to call it. It's a big, brightly coloured, just way over the top violent film that I just had a lot of fun watching.
So, shall we do a quick roundup of what's out next week?
Yep, let's do it. I'm sure there's an absolute masterpiece somewhere in the pipeline coming this Friday, right?
Oh, I bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's have a look.
There's
Let's just read the top
there's
there. Oh, for God's sake.
there's Emma, a new Jane Austen adaptation, which, judging by the trailer, looks to have really captured Austen's particular tone of not being funny at all.
Oh, ouch. I thought I looked okay. Yeah,
I hate Jane Austen. I'm going to make that clear. There is nothing
Oh,
a Jane
dear.
Austen adaptation could do that would make me want to watch it.
It's got Bill Nye doing the funny Bill Nye thing. It'll keep me going. I'm happy with that. I'm easily pleased when it comes to Bill Nye. I wonder if he'll do that
Yeah.
little snort laugh thing. He does. That one. Yeah. I love it.
There's First Love, the new film by Takashi Miike. I say new, but he's probably completed about 12 more things since I started this sentence.
I constantly feel I'm about 12 films behind on Miike.
Yeah. There will be a review of this coming from Rob. I don't know whether it'll be on the site or the show, but it will come along. There's a couple of reissues. There's Ghost with Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, and A Potter's Wheel.
Yeah, I watched this for the first time recently. Like I'll admit it. Yeah. So it's for the 30th anniversary and obviously Valentine's Day as well. It's a good film. It's pretty. It's like if everyone remembers this kind of this kind of chick flick type thing. The Potter's Wheel thing happens in the first 10 minutes. He's not even a ghost at that point in the film. I was stunned by that. But it's this mad genre bender of a film. It's funny. It's got mystery. It's got violence. It's got it's a pretty much in the kind of date movie you don't actually get anymore.
Right.
So, just go for that. It's nice to put it back on, isn't it?
Yeah. There's also The Lost Boys, which is way too 80s for my blood, I'm afraid. Don't like it at all.
Yeah, I don't think that's an anniversary one. We just fancy putting it back on.
And that's it. There are no other films out, none whatsoever.
No masterpieces.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you sure? I've just got to mention it. I've just got to mention it because I was getting a haircut the other day, and the radio was on the background, and there was an advert for a certain film, and my barber just went, "They're turning Sonic the Hedgehog into a film. How's that going to work?" To which my answer is, I don't think it's going to, but it hasn't stopped them.
You know what? We're doing is Film of the Week next week.
Go on.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, have fun. I'm still going to be asleep. I'm going to be sleeping off the Oscars by then, I'm afraid.
Getting in your excuses early.
Yeah, hi, you've reached Mark. I'm not here right now, but if you...
Yeah, you're washing your hair. No. So, until next week with Sonic the Hedgehog, that's been your lot from Cinema Eclectica. I've been Graham.
I've been Mark.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.